Marvel's Spider-Man 2, the follow-up to fan-favorite Spider-Man PS4, has cemented itself as one of, if not the most highly anticipated game of 2023. Fans all around the world, myself included, clawed, itched, and scratched at every bit of information that would come out ever since that initial reveal trailer back in 2021. Fast forward to release October 2023, and the game launches as a commercial success, receiving extremely high praise from almost every corner, and it's currently sitting at a 90 critic score on Metacritic. Now, before you pull out your torches and pitchforks, I just want to say I absolutely loved the ride Spider-Man 2 took me on. It's arguably one of my favorite Spider-Man stories. But as much as I adore this game, I don't think it was a perfect experience or a perfect narrative.
Departing entertainment.
Small story short, the gameplay of Spider-Man 2 in my opinion is a step up in every direction. The web swinging here got an upgrade with new tools to utilize and the ability to traverse at much higher speeds. The fluidity of combat got an upgrade with it feeling more raw and even brutal as Peter uses his new symbiote abilities and Miles with his evolved Venom powers. Even the side content, where I do have some complaints, as a majority has had a great overall upgrade. The gameplay package here definitely delivers the full Spider-Man fantasy to all Spider-Man fans out there, and if you're into these type of games, you definitely won't be disappointed. The moment-to-moment gameplay in Spider-Man 2 is a lot of fun. I don't think there was ever a moment of boredom throughout my 20 hours of not only playing the game, but also getting that platinum trophy. To elaborate on the combat I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of really great and fun things about it, but I also feel like I still have a few negatives regarding it. Both Peter and Miles share mostly the same basic skill set and attacks. The game benefits off this though by making the switch between them super easy to the player. Some of these attacks are super cool too. One of my favorites are where you webline an enemy and whip them across the environment, or just pull them up and smash them down into the pavement. The biggest downfalls with this system though is that both Peter and Miles can sometimes feel a little too familiar to play, and I don't think the skills on their separate skill trees and separate special moves I'll call them differentiate enough to make the combat scenarios any deeper depending on who you are currently playing. What has made the game deeper though is the newly introduced parry system. Certain enemies will flash yellow right before they attack, and if you time it just right, you have the opportunity to stun them with a parry. They removed pretty much all of Peter's gadgets from the previous game as well, and I've seen a lot of people complain about this online, but personally I prefer the new streamlined system. Instead of holding down R1 to open the gadget wheel and slowing down the entire game, you now hold it down instead to open a kinda quick fire menu, where you can press one of the 4 face buttons to shoot the gadget instantaneously. This system is also used for both of our Spider-Man's special attacks as well, where you hold the L1 button instead to launch a powerful super move attack. This new system greatly improved the flow of combat, and in my opinion it was a nice and needed change. The web swinging is fundamentally the same here as the previous games, while also receiving some new upgrades. The drastic increase to the swinging speed here makes the last 2 games feel oddly slow. This time around though, we get some pretty neat new tricks. You now have the ability to hit a pretty sweet loop-de-loop, you could tether and swing around sides of buildings, shoot web lines that you can walk across, which I find sometimes a little OP in stealth scenarios. You can attach yourself to pretty much almost anywhere and slingshot yourself across the map. There may not sound like there's a ton of upgrades to the basic web swinging, but I assure you that even though some of these additions are not monumental, they make the web swinging experience feel quite a bit deeper in contrast to the first game. Especially if you turn off the web swinging assist in the settings, the game feels quite a bit more physics based, and you'll have to pay more attention to what you're doing if you don't want to splat onto the streets of New York. I almost forgot to mention the web wings. These are also a super fun addition to web swinging, as you could seamlessly switch between them and the actual web swinging itself. My only real complaint here was the highlighted wind tunnels. I wish there was an option to turn these off because I found them almost immersion breaking. That might just be a preference, but I really don't like them. Other than that though, the web swinging here provides, in my opinion, the best swinging experience out there, and you cannot find this anywhere else. Now, onto one of the biggest parts of this video, my thoughts on the story. I'm going to keep this section of the video mostly spoiler free, and honestly quite brief. I'm hoping to make a completely different video regarding spoilers and completely breaking it down and giving my full thoughts on the game's narrative. My co-host Caden still hasn't played through it, and our backlog of videos is quite full right now, so I'm not sure when that's going to come out. But stay tuned and subscribe if you like our content here. Sorry to ramble. Here we go, I guess. I have mixed but good feelings on Spider-Man 2. There's a lot of highs here in this story, and through this is going to go down as a fan-favorite Spider-Man story. This game has amazing set pieces ripped straight from the pages of a comic. A great, but not perfect, retelling of the classic symbiote storyline, and a pretty interesting dialogue on the sacrifices that comes with being Spider-Man. The game starts off showing how Peter, even as an experienced Spider-Man, struggles with his responsibilities as both Spider-Man and Mr. Parker himself. He's at a stage in his life where he has to have a stable job to afford to pay off Aunt May's house. Sheesh, look at that mortgage payment. After she sadly passed away during the first game. I think the game sells this aspect of Peter really well by showing us his inner conflict to the point where he almost turns down his dream job because of his obligation to being one of New York's crime fighters. Miles similarly has to deal with these issues as well. He struggles to represent himself in his college essay as just Miles Morales by leaving out some of the biggest parts of his life, including being Spider-Man. Especially with how big and important being Spider-Man is to him. Miles allows himself to almost miss out on interviews with college representatives that could net him scholarships into some of his favorite programs. Peter and Miles' relationship is handled perfectly in this game for me too. They have a great kind of student-mentor dynamic while still being really close friends. They do an excellent job showing that through the missions they take on together and also down to their personal moments throughout the story.
Take this on the road sometime. Sounds like a good excuse to finally build that Spider-Mobile.
Now, I am a big Black Suit Spider-Man fan, and to be honest, I was absolutely nerding out the entire time Peter had that symbiote on him. We get to see his change of personality and the tears it causes in his relationships with Harry, MJ, and Miles. We get to see him more angry, aggressive, and straight up brutal during combat. I'm really happy they emphasized this though, but I kinda wish I got to see a little bit more of it throughout the story. But maybe that's just the hungry symbiote Spider-Man fan in me. If you're a Venom fan, you'll absolutely have a treat here. He's massive, menacing, and pretty brutal in this game too. They checked off every box on making Venom feel like a massive threat, and honestly quite scary sometimes. And while we're on the topic of villains, I also want to mention my thoughts on Kraven. I think for the most part he was represented kinda It seems like they tried really hard to tell us how much of a threat he is and all these crazy things he's doing throughout the story without actually really showing us what he could do. He has some pretty cool moments in the story, but once again I wish we got to see a little bit more of him. Now, I know I've been mostly positive towards the story, but I actually think that a few key parts of it missed the mark a little for me. Now, I can't go into detail about a lot of the issues I have with it without heading into spoilers, and I'll save that for a spoiler discussion video because there is so much I'm wanting to talk about. To keep it light though, in my opinion, all of Act 1 and most of Act 2 is pretty tight, and maybe almost perfect. But I think the game tripped and stumbled a satisfying and emotional payoff for more spectacle in a kind of rushed third act. For a lot of people, the third act will be incredible, but for me it didn't hit nearly as hard as I wanted it to, especially in contrast to how I felt after playing the first game. Now, I know they're planning on making Spider-Man 3, so we'll have to wait and see how this story continues. I just wanted to mention that the original soundtrack for this game is phenomenal. They did an excellent job. The main theme was crafted perfectly to represent our two Spider-Men, combining orchestral bliss with some deep hip-hop elements. sometimes when Kraven's theme played, I kinda got chills. The side content, map, and the progression are woven together honestly pretty nicely in Spider-Man 2. Completing an activity in each district furthers your XP/progression bar for said district. This all further unlocks you a variety of tokens and some skill points that you could spend towards skills in the skill tree, suit or tech upgrades, and even some gorgeous new Spidey suits. The side content here is also quite a step up as well. There's a lot less tedium, better puzzles, and even more fun combat challenges. Some of the side missions too were honestly incredible, even better than some story missions. Along with all this is also an extension to the original map, adding both Brooklyn and Queens, making the total map almost doubled in size. Gameplay wise though, the new districts never really added too much to mix things up or provide much new, like you'd think with the low-rise buildings of Brooklyn and some of the smaller neighborhoods in Queens. Otherwise though, I do love these additions, and visually and aesthetically, they are my favorite parts of the map. Here at the Parting Entertainment, we are going to rate the games we review on two different scales. Our value scale, and our basic 1 through 10 critic rating. Our value scale is a system we're still working out, but as of right now, we're going to rate how much each aspect of the game adds up to the total amount of its current MSRP. So in today's case, we'll be evaluating each aspect of Spider-Man 2 to see if it's fully worth that $70 price tag. I'd also like to note that there is no correlation between our value rating and our critic rating, and they do not influence or correlate with each other. Anyways, let's begin. I think the story here once again is an extremely solid experience. If you like Spider-Man, you're going to walk away from this definitely not disappointed. I do have a lot of high praises for the story, and even with some of my criticisms, I will still be giving it an almost perfect value score of $18. The moment-to-moment gameplay for me here is absolutely perfect. In my opinion, it nailed absolutely everything I'd expect and dream of for a Spider-Man game. And even if you aren't a massive Spider-Man fan, there's a lot of fun to be had here. My only real downside was the fact that Peter and Miles felt too similar, but all that really says is just the fact that I couldn't get enough. So I'm still going to give it a perfect $20 score. I let the music speak for itself earlier. I have no criticisms and nothing to say. Another perfect $20. Spider-Man 2 has a streamlined yet fun progression system, stunning map with amazing attention to detail, side missions that are on par and even better than some main story missions. All the side activities have been cleaned up. While overall having less to do in Spider-Man 2 compared to its predecessor, it is all way more engaging and way less tedious. All of this accumulating to another perfect $20 score. Even though it's a steep price, I completely think it has earned the full $70 price tag. I definitely recommend you going out of your way to purchase this game. Spider-Man 2 has solidified itself a complete value score of $70 plus at $70, alongside its final critic score of 9 out of 10. I'd personally like to thank all of you for watching our first value review, and also our first video ever. Feel free to discuss all of your thoughts and comments, and if you liked the video, you know what to do. Just don't forget to subscribe too.
The Parting Entertainment.